Hello.
Yes, hello and welcome to Talk Taboo. Today, we have an amazing and incredible guest, and I am absolutely thrilled to have Melissa Meadow on with us today, known as the Modern Mortician. And as always, I am Krista, and
I'm Tracy. We are taboo hosts of Talk Taboo to Me podcast.
talking about the stuff that we're not supposed to talk about, apparently.
Apparently.
Like I mentioned, we have the amazing Melissa Meadow here, and her sidekick Kermit is around there somewhere. Kermit the dog. Not Kermit the frog, but Kermit the dog, which is so cute. And now I'm saying that out loud. I'm really seeing how adorable it is. Well, Melissa is well, as she says, a former, as I could say, for triple threat, licensed funeral director and non practicing embalmer in Texas, Washington, and Oregon. And Kermit the dog is a certified therapy dog that has served over 500 families in the career together. That is so unbelievably impressive. She has worked in death care since 96. And she began to question the status quo vocally in 2015 online and crafting the online identity known as the Modern Mortician. She started her mission to lift the veiled hood on the cloak of the dead. That's really good. And her current mission is not far from that. She wants to be transparent, honest, and open-minded and be a guide to those seeking a meaningful end of life exit. She has over the last decade, she has been privileged to work closely with the founders of multiple green burial spaces, which I am super excited to learn more about and talk to you about today. She was the first funeral director in Texas to facilitate, hope I can say this, alkaline hydrolysis. Alkaline
Yes.
hydrolysis. Is that essentially water cremation?
Yes, that's it.
Fascinating. Okay, great. She has
Wow.
had she has had the honor of participating in a laying and a ceremony of composting natural organic reduction. And over the years, she has tested and worked with many funerary products and has revealed predatory products like the mushroom burial shroud, which I saw so many videos about. And it's fascinating to me that people got sucked in. But I also think that just goes to show us how many people are truly wanting to have an ethical and an organic and a very natural and healthy burial process that unfortunately stuff like the mushroom burial shrouds can come into play. So she is a professional, a public resource, an educator, an advocate, and an industry disruptor. Love that. Thank you so much again for being here, Melissa, on today.
Thank you. When you read it all out, it does sound impressive. It makes me feel like, okay, I actually am doing something right.
You're like, "Yeah, I really am."
Imposter syndrome, you know?
Oh my gosh. Like the imposter mortician. You're like, I don't even work in that. As a matter of fact,
Nope.
I
What?
deliver babies.
Totally.
What? Oh my gosh. We're so excited to have you. Should we just jump right into our questions? Let's do it. Well, I think it would be helpful if you could sort of talk us through what is a modern mortician and how you decided to get into that field of work.
Well, a modern mortician can be anybody in the end of life field that is open to the changes that are happening and willing to accept change in order to provide the best for their community that they're serving. I always thought when I started the Modern Mortician, I always thought there would be a bunch of us all over, and someday there could be the Modern Mortician. Somebody already probably took that website, but I just think it's about. I don't think that the future of death care is about the funeral home so much as it is about the funeral professional, whether that's a funeral director or a death doula or something along those natures. Yeah. So, what was the first part of your question?
The first part. The second part is
Okay.
how you decided to get into it.
That was interesting. So I kind of always was the default person that the family leaned on to handle the end of life care for pets. Like I had to take my mom's cats in. She couldn't do it. I'd have to be there with them for their last euthanasia or whatever. And then be the person that buried them, things like that. It's just going into it was for the science and the arts. I wanted to take somebody that was sick and frail. This is how it was sold to me also in mortuary school. Taking somebody that was sick and frail and making them look lifelike again. But as I was working in the career and started to ask questions they didn't like, I knew I was on the path to something interesting. And the modern mortician online is fleshed out to be I'm more of an advocate, whistleblower, questioner, things like that. And it's kind of delved me into more of the death doula side. I've always been an advocate for families, which made it difficult to actually work for funeral homes that, you know, didn't have the family's interest at heart. But
Yeah,
that's why I do what I do now.
I love
I
it. Well, you're
love
talking to the right people. I mean, one thing that Tracy and I believe in is that concept of being a disruptor. So I love that you're questioning things and really being there for the individuals that you work with. I think that's amazing.
absolutely. Yeah, and actually, weird fun fact, when I was just being very gothic in my period of gothicness, I applied to work at a funeral home because I thought that was the right job for somebody who was gothic. And the first thing they told me was about having to hit sales numbers and upsell people. And I was so disgusted that I, even though I thought that would be the coolest gothic job to have, I was like turned away. I was 18. I was like, that's crazy. You take advantage of people at a time of need to get as much money as possible so that you can get as high of a cut as possible off that funeral. I was like shocked
I
that that's
think more people need to talk about that, especially the folks like yourself that go in and interview for these pre-need sales jobs or just right out of the gate, apprenticeships. They find out really quickly, there's some programs out there that'll pay for mortuary school, but you have to sign on with them for X number of years. And then those X number of years are just completely brutal where you're being abused by your mentors and things like that. And then still, besides the employee not being treated well, they're then having to take advantage of the families, in my personal opinion, which you just, expressed yourself.
Okay. So I feel like we couldn't have a taboo podcast without me asking a question like this. So, what is it like to work in such close proximity to the deceased on a daily basis?
I don't know how to put that into words. It made you really cognizant of your own mortality.
Mm.
Um, there was a lot of empathy for the life that they may have had. You start picking up bits and pieces as it comes to making arrangements with the family. Like, did this person have a close family relationship? Were they ostracized? Were they were they sick for a while? Did they fulfill their bucket list? Some of these things cross your mind. Yeah, it's hard to put it into words, but you're very cognizant of reality in life when you're around the deceased.
yeah.
I didn't know exactly what I was expecting and like how you were going to answer that. But like when you said that, like I really felt like even kind of like even a pause within myself. I was like, dang, like how could you not do a job like you have and have like extreme levels of empathy, but at the same time, extreme like boundaries? Because I can even understand how difficult that might be for you to just even think like self care and being in a job where it's consistently end of life and you're dealing with significant levels of grief and confusion and regret and so many different things. When you answered, I don't know, there was something so beautiful about your answer. And I really liked that answer.
Yes, me too.
It's something that's what's kind of defined who I am as a educator and person today is I want to give families that pause. When death happens, a lot of the time you got a hospital giving you a list like pick a funeral home and get the out of here or a nursing home and they got to fill that bed. They got to move on or the death happens at home. You don't know that you can keep the body there for 24 hours and rotate out cooling devices like bags of peas or things like that. Having watching families over the course of my career, which has been extensive, since 1996 and out, but watching people that have the hands-on, that do the home funerals, take the additional time with their person that it isn't rushed or it isn't processed. When you get into a funeral home, it becomes processed. It's their methodology, it's their timeline, it's their this. When you maintain control of the situation and have hands on, whether it's sponge bathing your loved one, changing their clothes for the last time, brushing their hair, closing their mouth,
Mm.
tucking them in, something like that, spending time with the dead. I have seen people move along the grief scale far faster in their healing process. And it gives them that pause that I talk about that I have, with every decedent, that we interact with. I just think it's healthier, and I wish that I could provide that opportunity, or that funeral homes would just provide the knowledge and that opportunity to every family, or every, circle of people that comes together for somebody that died, because it's almost magical. I don't
Wow.
know how to.
I didn't even know that those were options. Like, I'm super mind
Yeah.
blown as somebody who sat through 2 home deaths of family members. Never was anyone like, "Would you like to keep them here longer? Did you know there were options?" It was like hospice person, you call them, they rushed over, they did a very quick sponge. So I just remember being slightly horrified actually, like, "Oh my gosh, just wipe down to the body, just zip them up, move them along." And I was like, I think I was like traumatized by watching. I was like, "This is what happens when you die at home." Like, I don't think I want to die at home. Who knew? I
And
I
then
had
you
no
have
idea.
the funeral directors that come in, and there's been a tradition for a long time where they get the family out of the room just in case they bump granny's head when they move her over onto the cot or something like that. What I observed is inviting the family to stay or participate or do it. Or if it was a situation where the funeral people like myself were going to have to go down a narrow hall and carry the person, invite the family to participate. Do you know how many young men and families want to buck up and carry grandma one last time down the foyer or whatever? Giving people permission to participate once the death happens, they're all looking for permission because nobody knows what to do. And
Yeah,
so countless times I watch funeral directors push the family out, and it makes them more scared. Like, what are you doing to my mother in there? Are you touching her thigh when you're moving her over? Like, what are you doing?
yeah,
Invite people in to be part of the process. It just is going to make things so much easier for the funeral professional and the family that's grieving that
Yeah,
loss.
gosh, hearing you say that. So I was actually recently, and I can't remember this psychologist's name, but there's somebody out there who, whenever we post this, I'll have to tag this person because they do a lot of their research on grief. And one of the things that they talk about is just like you say, that it seems like the second somebody dies, like a funeral director or coroner or whoever just takes the person away, and it kind of is leaving the family like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to, like, what am I supposed to do? And I guess psychology will even say that people can go through the grieving process so much healthier if they actually have the person there, sometimes even up for 2 weeks. That I guess sometimes people like yourself, like death doulas or something, can assist people in learning how to keep the bodies cool because we say decomposition process. But being able to be there can really allow the person to also get this experience of, okay, so really what is the self? Is it the consciousness or the body? And they really allow themselves to experience that for themselves. So I love how involved you are with the families and the healing process.
Thank you.
well, I have a question for you. What do people misunderstand the most about what you do? Like, what kind of assumptions are made?
It used to be they always assumed they'd be dealing with a man when they came into the funeral home.
Oh, yeah.
They thought I was the secretary getting the vital statistics information. I mean, again, I've been doing this for a while, so I've seen it change from mostly men in classrooms for funeral school to now women are outnumbering the men, as it
Oh,
should be.
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense actually, because I think about, I mean, on everything on TV, it's always a man. That's for sure.
yeah,
Absolutely. And usually he's very cold.
Right.
yeah, like very lurch-esque, hiding
Right.
in the corner in their suit, very quiet.
Yes, yes. So, how did you? Because, like you said, like you've been doing this for a while, and I know in your bio it said 96. So, yeah, you're not, no spring chicken. So, how did you become comfortable in this position and working with the deceased?
It did take a while. I'll say, when I was first helping out at a funeral home over the summer of '96, um, they had it. It was an older building, so of course the lights wouldn't be by the door. They'd be all the way across the room by the dead body. So you'd have to go over there and turn out the lights and then book it out of the room because it'd be dark in there and it's a long room. And you're there with the dead body that you don't know,
Oh
and
my
things
God, what if
smell
they wake up?
weird. Yeah,
Wow.
it smells weird in there, and noises, and so it took a while. It wasn't until It was after mortuary school, and it was when I was finally set loose to care for the decedents on my own, whether it was removing the bodies from the place of death, bringing them back, and placing them in refrigeration or placing them on the embalming table. Having that kind of intimacy with the dead definitely took the fear out of it. But you're programmed to have a fear of the dead, and it is. I think it's absolutely normal to be like, oh, hell no, light and run out the room. But once it came to a realization, I guess, the living can hurt you far more than the dead can.
Mm.
And then at that point, you're just like, "What are you gonna do?" Nothing.
You're like, I'll outrun you.
Yes, I tied your shoelaces together. You're not going anywhere.
My gosh. No, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, you can kind of almost have to have like a little bit of dark humor going
Yeah,
into it. Like, you're not going anywhere. Yeah, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
That makes sense, though. That makes a lot.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. We are all programmed in general, it seems, to death sounds scary. And I used to work at a hospital, and the first time I had to take a body to the morgue, I felt haunted in my heart for like days. I was like, you were in a room and there were people and they were in drawers and there was like weights of organs written on a whiteboard and just the drain in the middle of the room. And I was like, okay, I never want to come in this room again. I used to trade with people. Like if it was like a matter of you needed to take someone to the morgue, I was like, I'll work for you Saturday if you do it. I don't wanna go in there. I only went in once. I managed 4 years. I only had to go to the morgue once because that was enough for me to be scared. So, you're right. We are programmed to be scared. I don't know what you're gonna
did
say
they
right
make
now.
you guys take the decedents down the hallway in, like, this little tent contraption so people couldn't tell it was a body, it looked like laundry or something?
We had them on a stretcher, and we would just put a sheet over them, and
Okay.
so I think people did know what it was, but we tried to, not get in an in an elevator with, like, other people for the most part. It would just be 2 of us, "No, you go ahead, we'll take the next one," because it was weird. Yeah, I'm still uncomfortable, actually, so talking to you is helping me personally, so I'm excited.
Yes, I
And thinking about being scared or not scared, I feel like it would be a crime not to ask you this question. But have you ever experienced anything that you would consider paranormal or like not of this world that would be scary or not scary, maybe?
like looking at her
Yeah.
face. She's like, I knew I was gonna get this question.
This one will always be the cream of the crop. There's 2 things that happened, but this one will always be the top one. I was doing an apprenticeship. I was a student in Arlington, Texas, and it was one of the main SCI funeral homes. I cannot think of the name right now, but like Dimebag Darrell's buried out there. Anyway, so they had a chapel and a courtyard and then the main entrance. So this chapel was also connected to the back end where you had the prep room, the break room, the entrance to the viewing rooms and things like that. We had to make sure that the door was locked after viewing. So I was the student that was sent through the courtyard in the dark to check the chapel door. Now, the you may see this if you pay attention at funeral homes, they'll have a porch, not a porch light on, but like a lamp lit when a decedent is in state. That's an old tradition. So,
Hmm.
like for when you're in small towns, if the lamp was on at the funeral home, the people in the community, before the internet knew somebody died. And then they could
Oh.
get up the next morning and go have coffee. Who died? Who died? But the lamp was on because we had people in state, and it was like a stained glass window, and the chapel was dark. So somebody had turned all the lights off except for that, but I'm going to go check the doorknob. And as I reach for the doorknob, something crosses between the door and the lamp. So I see a figure, and as my hand grasps the doorknob, it turns the opposite direction in my hand. I knew nobody else was in there because I had just left the other person. There's no way they could have gotten around. So I took off back in, and of course, I'm face to face with my coworkers who were not on that side of the building.
Oh.
So that's the most memorable one.
Why? Just kidding.
Why? I didn't actually but the second one was at a crematory, and we would hear disembodied voices, like, I swear to God, one time we heard somebody say, "Where am I?" And it wasn't just me, it was another guy that was there too, 'cause Why in these buildings do you have to turn the lights off on one end and then run to the other end to get out? I don't know. But that was the
mean.
situation, and as I moved towards him to meet him to go to the door, it was at the corner of the crematory retort, so the lights are way over here, you have the crematory retort, there's a body in there going, so it's a little but literally, it was like somebody whispered in our ear, "Where am I?"
Did you
And we both got
answer?
out there, and he's like, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "What did you hear?" "Yes, we did. We did."
Wow.
You're just making sure, like, yeah, what did you hear? Like, I'm not the crazy one.
Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
interesting. Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. So glad that Tracy asked that question. Okay, so I'm gonna ask a question and that again I think it also would be a crime to not ask. What's the most difficult case, ethically speaking, what's the most difficult case that you've ever had to work on and how did you handle it?
Immediately comes to mind, a woman died face down. She was probably in her 60s. She had been an alcoholic, so her family was used to not seeing her for a couple of days at a time. Apparently, she aspirated, so she was face down, and when you are, your blood pools at, the gravity. So her face was mostly purple from this, and
Wow.
doing the embalming after they've been there, it stains your skin. So she was discolored, swollen. I remember working on her at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there was a thunderstorm outside, and I was still an apprentice. Well, no, I was just done with my apprenticeship. This was in Texas. It was in Texas. And the guy that I worked with wasn't a helpful person at all. And so in trying to please him and also please this family, I did a lot of overtime off the books. So I was there at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I'd just come home from a removal. So I was already in the building and I was like, I can tend to this now and that's going to get me 2 steps ahead in the morning. And I just remember manipulating her skin and things, trying to get it to lay properly. And the thunder outside, I was like, I feel like I'm on the set of a monster movie. This should not be something that anybody deals with. This is horrible what has happened to this woman and the expectations that people have that she could look viewable, but I was still going to do it. I was still going to do my very best. They did end up having a closed casket because of the amount of cosmetics that we had to have on her face to cover the discoloration. However, the swelling had gone down, her eyes closed properly, her mouth closed properly. It was a huge undertaking, as you would say. And to this day, I still think about it when people ask me what's the most difficult case.
Wow. About how long ago was that?
2014, 2015.
Okay. Being that long ago and still being so impactful, that's
Yeah.
nuts.
Wow. Goodness gracious. I'm trying to imagine. I mean, and how interesting that it was like a thunderstorm and all this. Like you said, it was like, you know, it's
Yeah,
like
I
a,
was like, am I being punked?
yeah,
Somebody's gonna come out and say, "This
totally.
is not real." It was very real.
Oh my goodness. Well, I am one. What is the most unusual or interesting request you've received for either like a funeral or a burial or a end of, after somebody's deceased that you thought was the most interesting or unusual?
I've had several that popped to mind. One of them was a guy had a list of who could come to the visitation for his son, which, if you can imagine, is very difficult to ID everybody coming in for a visitation.
Uh,
Another person had me put glitter in their mother's cremation casket. Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, I love glitter,
Right.
so
yeah,
I get
yeah.
it.
So
Interesting.
just a flood of different things. It's like, as long as it's legal, moral, and ethical, I'm gonna do it. Like, okay, we almost. So there's only one place in the United States that does open air cremation pyre, right? It's in Crestone, Colorado, and you have to be a resident to get this service. And it's beautiful. There's mountains in the background, they're set out on an open pyre and they burn and then they're reduced, and yeah. It's a community affair basically. Well, I had a client in Texas and the man died unexpectedly. And in discussions with the wife, she said, "Oh, he always wanted to be cremated like Darth Vader on a pyre." And I was like, "It's not illegal." And she hooked onto that. She was she told his friends, we were going to do it. And in the laws in Texas, it's not illegal.
Oh,
However, what we were going to have to do was involve the fire department. We were going to have to be outside the city limits. It was not going to be a burn ban. There was a lot that was going to have to happen. And I knew that I was gonna get in trouble. They were gonna drag me in front of the licensing department, all kinds of stuff, but I had the right people in place, like the fire chief and different things like that, to make sure that I was gonna do this according to the laws.
Yeah.
So then they'd have to actually write it out of the laws to make sure it never happened again. 2 days before we were set to do this, 2 days before, and we got rain in the forecast, and she decided not to wait. And I took a big sigh of relief because I was like, "Well, at least I don't have to jump that hurdle now." But that's the thing, is that there's still pieces missing in the laws of funeral care where you could establish an outdoor cremation pyre if done the right way for
Oh,
people that really speaks to.
that is
Just like
interesting.
the whole water cremation thing in Texas not being legal yet, it's still not one of the states that's legalized it, but I basically started an entire business there for water cremation and greener cremation, and we just flew the bodies to St. Louis, Missouri. It's a carbon neutral trip. The plane is gonna go there anyway. They're just catching a ride.
I don't even know what that is. Can you just say what is a water cremation?
Water cremation.
I
Water
don't know that.
cremation is reduction of the body by water and, like, alkaline. So it's like a 95% mix of water and sodium hydroxide, sodium, potassium. So it's somewhere between a spa day for your corpse and Breaking Bad, you know?
Okay.
Acid bath versus spa day.
I'm so glad
It's
you mentioned Breaking Bad because that's exactly where my mind went.
Yeah.
Everybody immediately thinks the worst, but it's like, you know how your fingers get all wrinkly in the bathtub? You just get
Yeah.
softer and softer. That's all it is. You are 70, 80% water anyway. So what's left looks like iced tea with glitter in it because the glittery stuff in the liquid that is you is fats, amino acids, peptides, salts, all the things that are like
Huh.
chock full of greatness for plant life. And so that
Oh,
effluent liquid can go back into the sewer system just like your blood or your poop or your pee does or any hospital waste does. Because it has the alkaline solution added to it, it's considered like a great power punch for our municipal systems. It cleans as it goes through. The family gets the bone remains back, which are their most basic element, carbon phosphate. So it's like a powder instead of chunky kitty litter like you get with flame remains
Mhm.
that's on. Now,
oh,
another thing that can happen with the liquid portion that's left after water cremation, for example, there's a place in Colorado called, and I'm always going to throw them under the bus because they did it first, be a tree cremation. They take that liquid, it's picked up by farmers, sod farmers, tree farmers, and it is used to fertilize plant life that don't go back into the edible food system, but it's not going into the municipal system.
wow.
Fascinating.
Know about any of that. Like I was trying to imagine when you said that, I was imagining flames on water and I was like, that doesn't mix. How do you do that? Okay.
No, no, I'm glad that Tracy asked that. And like, okay, so this place in Colorado does, they take the remains. But what do people typically do? Because obviously, like with ashes, you'll see people, sprinkle them on football fields, even though you're not supposed to, but people do it all the time. Or they'll put it like in the Grand Canyon, but they'll do something very special with it. How are people discarding? Discarding is probably not the best use of term. How are people celebrating their loved one when they have the remains in that fashion? What are they
You
doing?
still get an urn back with the bone matter in it because that's always left at the end. You're left with a skeleton with flame or water cremation, and then it's processed with blades to either make the powder that you see with the water cremation because it's so much basic form element, or the chunky stuff that you see with flame because it's a little more hard, so you have more brittle bone. So you still get that back at the end. And that is a thing, even with flame cremation, people aren't planning for is what's going to happen to your cremated remains next because now they're ending up at Goodwill. They're ending up on the side of the road in Beaverton, Oregon, at a street light, which I had on my TikTok recently. They're ending up in movie theaters. I mean, just anywhere. People are just dropping these urns off anywhere. And it's like, and then I've also had posts where I show people will dump cremated remains like at an existing burial spot. Grandpa's buried there, grandma got cremated, we're gonna go dump her over there. It kills the grass. Totally,
Oh,
it's scorched earth, because cremated remains are pH negative. They are not good for plant life. So anybody
Mm-mm.
that's selling you a tree or anything like that, you have to either sequester those cremated remains away from the root ball or the root system so they can't be infiltrated because it acts like concrete. That's why so many funeral homes are caught giving away concrete in place of cremated remains is because it acts the same.
My goodness.
What? That is nuts to me. And then I'm thinking about the fact that you continuously hear stories where people are like, well, I want my grandma to like her remains need to be in the backyard of her childhood home. And so you would hear people like sneaking in and like dumping the remains of grandma in somebody's backyard. I never knew that that's going to ruin their yard.
Me either. I thought like I was thinking along the lines of like people that take their placenta home and, bury it and make a tree that, okay, but
That's
this will
better.
kill a tree. Interesting.
I just immediately, I mean, because it's organic. And so I just assumed that it would be kind of like a fertilizer for people,
Right.
but I guess it's the entire opposite. So, dang, that really blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just like to tell people when you're walking around an older cemetery, usually it doesn't happen in the really well manicured ones because it gets cleaned up
Mhm.
pretty quickly, much like at Disney. But you go into an older cemetery, if you look near the headstones or the footstones, you'll sometimes see what looks like just a random clump of concrete. That's somebody's cremated remains.
Wow.
There was a post that went around on Reddit at one time where the girl was like, "Yeah, we live in a moisture climate, near the beach. My dad had been cremated. He was up in a closet. And one day I was like, Mom, I want to put him in a necklace. And she got him out and they had to chisel at Brick Dad because he'd solidified in the little box that they sent him home in because of the moisture content in the air."
Wow.
Wow. This is
Wow.
making me really reconsider some of the things that I have
Dang.
considered doing, like when my parents have passed. And like
Mhm.
one of them is I thought how neat it would be to mix like maybe, one of my parents' ashes and getting like a tattoo or something like that. Now it's making do you see your face? This is
Yeah,
why
like
I'm reconsidering my life choices right now. I haven't done it. Okay?
Good. Well,
Haven't done
here's the
it.
thing about that. Let me tell you about that real quick. The cremated remains will never get small enough to go into the needle to actually infuse into your skin. So what you're doing is it's like putting dirt in the cup and it settles at the bottom. The dirt is touching the bone, is touching the ink that then is going into you.
Uh-huh.
So in some cases, some tattoo artists will say that that is a cross contamination and they won't do it,
Makes
but
sense.
some will because it's considered a sterile material at that point. It's been burnt. So they'll put it in there, but it never gets infused in the person's skin. It's more the sentimentalness of it touching the ink.
Yeah.
So it's still something I don't poo-poo what people wanna do, but that's something they need to know. You're not actually infusing that bone matter into your skin.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Okay. I feel like we could get on this for a while if we continue. So I'm going to move on and ask a different question. So I've learned like since I communicated with you, I feel like all I do is I watch so many videos on you. I've listened to so many podcasts and learned so much about green burials and which I found there are actually some and I'm in Kansas. There are some in Kansas and they're actually in the town where I'm at. And learning about the fact that you no longer do embalming. Is that correct? At least with a green burial, is that correct?
Right, right. Embalming is not required by law anyway. Funeral directors like people to do that because it leads to an upsell, which leads to a visitation, and the body looks better embalmed, like they're gonna sit up and walk out of the room. I don't think that's necessarily healthy for people in the grieving process. Stops decomposition too, and that's what a lot of funeral professionals will not admit to. And some of them don't even have their own refrigeration units. I worked for a guy, the last guy that I worked for left a body out for almost a week unrefrigerated. And the mess we had to clean up, me and the student that he had for that location. I will never forgive this man. He gave me PTSD. But yeah, it's you can utilize refrigeration and not have to embalm.
wow. So those is that like those drawers that they have that they're like in a refrigerator wall?
No, it's even worse. Imagine, like, the first restaurant you worked in as a kid where all the vegetables and stuff were. It's a walk-in
Oh,
refrigerator.
the
Oh,
walk-in.
Yeah, with
which
shelving,
ones?
and you can usually put one person one direction on one shelf and then the other one, toes to foot to head. So you got your person with the toes and the head, and then you put your next person in next to them, toes by the head. So you can usually put 2 to a shelf, but they're usually stacked 3 high.
It's like bunk bed
Wow.
in a
Yes,
refrigerator.
yes.
Tracy.
Okay. No, I like that better than I don't know, I've
I
seen
mean,
The little drawers.
yeah,
yeah, that's kind of like a segue to my real question. My real question is because I wanted to also bring up the embalming piece and that's not done in a green burial. But with that being said, what safeguards do you use to ensure that somebody is actually deceased?
That's actually probably a really good question to be asking these days because if you Google how many times a living person has ended up at the funeral home lately, even in America, because CNAs or whoever is not pronouncing properly,
Yep.
I didn't have a protocol. By the time I drove them in the van somewhere and got in refrigeration, you'd know if they're alive or dead. When you move a body, the signs that they teach us in school is like hold a mirror under their nose or poke their toe with a needle. We didn't do that. By the time we were getting them, they were going in refrigeration. So yeah.
you are
There's not any need to do all this like extra checking or
We may need
anything.
to though, but we may need to because of these situations now that are happening. You just really made me think things over. If I need to start bringing a mirror on removals now because of that situation. So I don't know, maybe.
interesting.
I know that this is all coming from like, I mean, you're right. Like you hear certain stories and hearsay and everything, but my God, how many of us have seen like that documentary or that movie or whatever? And I realize it's entirely bullshit, but you see this and it's like somebody is in the morgue and they're like, oh my God, where am I? I can't believe I took this poison that caused my vital signs to like go down, which
Yeah.
I know is stupid. But you're right. There are situations where people are just missing things.
I think it happened a lot more in the early years of funeral homes
Sure.
because it reminds me of a guy that I worked for a long time ago that said one time they got a body back. This was back when ambulances and hearses were the same vehicle. So if that tells you maybe the 50s or 60s. And he said they got a body back and he went to cut and he was like, they're still alive. And they were. They got him back to the hospital and they died a few hours later. But the fact that this is still happening today, yeah, we probably need more procedures in place to make sure somebody's really dead.
Did
That's
I just break your brain a little bit
Yes,
thinking about
just a little bit.
that is completely nuts. That's all
I've
I
always treated them as if they could still hear me or something like that.
yeah.
So who knows? Who knows?
Wow. Yeah, I hope that they have at least I mean, I guess if you wouldn't maybe know if somebody was at home, but I hope I don't know, when I worked in a hospital, there were a number of things, like obviously checking vitals and a sternal rub with your knuckles, like a few things that you could try, but I always went with like the pulse. Like if
Yeah,
you don't have a pulse, that's weird. I don't know how
yeah.
you're alive. Like, can people at least check a pulse before they send a body off? At least the very minimum? Do you mind?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, so there is a protocol when somebody dies, you just don't get to go straight to the or the funeral home if you die at home. Like, they'll have EMS come in and pronounce or actually, by law, EMS doesn't pronounce. If EMS comes in and the person is dead, then they call either the sheriff or the county coroner or the medical examiner to come out. And the medical examiner or the county coroner will do the pronouncement. Or if they were on hospice, then the hospice nurse comes out, pronounces it, and the doctor just certifies that, yes, that's the time that they died. So there are people involved in the process beyond just a funeral director showing up and taking your loved one off, thankfully. But like I said, we're in 2025 and you will hear of situations, just Google it, where they're coming from nursing homes. Okay. And I'm
mm,
going to say it's because the nursing home aides or the CNAs, they're overstaffed, understaffed and overworked. And maybe they are new and they don't know. They're scared of dead bodies. So they think Rhonda stopped breathing. Everybody stands at the doorway and goes, "Yep, she's dead." And they call the funeral home. I think that's what's happening. It's like
yeah.
people aren't actually going in and laying hands on these bodies.
Oh, I'm definitely Googling that later today.
I'm definitely not going to a nursing home. I've honestly told my children, and I mean this like from the bottom of my heart, if I get to the point where it appears I need a nursing home, take me and just push me off of a very tall cliff because I've always wanted to fly. So I feel like it would be two things at once, but has to be a straight drop, must be very tall. I'm saying that to in the future, in case my kids get in trouble, I asked for it. I walked myself off the cliff. That is the goal.
Yes.
Yep.
God, Tracy.
It seems reasonable.
I feel like that would be reasonable too, based on some of the things that I've seen come out of nursing homes. The amount of neglect
Yeah.
are the places have become, venture capitalists and people of money have moved into the death care space. I will tell you that there are people on in the president's lineage that have bought into death care. Um, Properties and businesses and things like that because the silver tsunami, the death boom, it is coming. And they're
Yeah.
buying these nursing homes, they're buying these retirement centers, and they're doing what corporations do, which is give as little as possible and take as much as they can. And with that, the patients are suffering. And
Oh,
with the broken families that we have these days, and you have a lot of people that are in these facilities that don't have family that check on them, they're the ones that are mistreated the most. Like, I have
Mm.
seen some of the most horrific conditions of decedents that come into my care, bed sores, bruising, like the bed sores. That's when you know somebody wasn't doing their job. That doesn't happen overnight. Those things that end up pockets as big as your fist, like
no.
there's no excuse for that. And as funeral directors, if the family asks us, we can tell them about it, but we can't start shit.
Right.
Sure.
Ugh, yucky. Well,
Mm.
I'm going to ask you an uplifting question to
Okay.
follow that. Are there any death rituals or practices from other cultures that you especially admire?
Anything Okay, so the Hispanic culture, when they're keeping the body at home for home funerals and they're doing the celebrations there, they're bringing food over, stuff like that. What I'd seen in some of the Asian cultures and some of the bigger funeral homes that handled those, where they would bring in offerings and set up tables with food and incense and just tons of flowers. And then they don't want those flowers at the end. You get to keep those as a funeral director, so this massive amount of flowers. I always appreciated that. We'd take
Wow.
him to, like, nursing homes or other places like that. If it didn't look like a funeral spray, we didn't wanna remind him, "You're next."
Right.
But the opulence and the care and, like, there's one particular culture, and I wanna say Vietnamese, but I could be wrong. They would bring in, like, fake money and stuff like that and burn it, and fake houses, little, like, houses and things because they're sending that with their loved one to the next life.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so instead of burning real money, thankfully, they all got to the point where they were bringing in little effigies, little things like that. So, there's another culture that from the, chapel to the crematory, they will throw coins in the air to mark the path, and the mourners pick them up, on the way to the crematory. It's just different things. What I've realized most, I guess my family, I was raised Southern Baptist and then my mom went the Methodist direction. I am not a religious person. Being ingrained and raised in all of that and then questioning it first. And then secondly, seeing how people handle death that don't believe the same thing I was raised to believe gave me a completely open understanding, like kind of like whatever brings you comfort, that's all that matters. It's not who's right, who's wrong, who did it best and who did it first. It's whatever brings them comfort, and I don't think it's any funeral director, hospice persons, clergy persons. I don't think it's anybody's job to say what should be.
That's
Even you can deal with families that practice, Wicca, is it
yeah.
witchy
Well,
things, or people that, want to do a celebration before they die. Maybe they're going to have a rave. Like,
Yeah.
what brings you and yours comfort? It should
yeah.
not be any of the layperson's places to judge. And that happens a lot in death care. The funeral directors are going to judge. But what we've got is a new breed of funeral directors coming in that are much more, what I would say, modern morticians. And so this is being accepted.
Yeah.
I love that. I love all these like celebrations because it feels so sad. I remember
Yeah.
talking to a friend of mine who she passed young, very young in her 30s of cancer. And I remember I was just really sad. And, I was at her bedside and I was talking to her and she said, "Oh, Tracy, I'm Jehovah's Witness. Like, I'm going to go celebrate and basically be in a party land, like with, like, no offense to anyone if I got it wrong, but like, I'm going to be with other Jehovah's Witnesses after I die, and it's like a celebration, so everybody's going to be very celebratory, and I just remember being like, "Wow, that kinda shook me as somebody
Mm,
who came from a different culture." I was raised Jewish where we sit for several days and mourn, and we cover the mirrors, and people bring you food. It's like this whole situation, like a week of sadness and memory, and I was like, "A party? This is a celebration party." I was like, "Okay, okay." Like, I like that
mm.
idea better. I really do. I really like that idea. Um, interesting.
All right. Well, Melissa, this has been incredibly just, I mean, I've learned so much
Yes.
from this discussion and so forth. And we have one more question. And when Tracy and I were even trying to figure out, like, gosh, there's a million things that we want to ask you. There's so many things. But of course, we only have like a certain amount of time. So Tracy and I are both mental health clinicians. And one thing that a lot of people come up to us, and I mean, I'm gonna do this like, can you diagnose me? What do you like that? Like they ask some really inappropriate questions because of our jobs. And so I'm wondering, is there a particular question or questions that people ask you that, quite frankly, you get sick of?
It's not questions so much as it is statements, especially being a pioneer in educating people on social media. I've been beat up for it for a long time. Like, I started my social media in 2016. I was one of the first funeral directors on social media. It was me, Caitlin Doty, Caleb Wild, and Little Miss Funeral. Not very many of us. So
Yeah.
a lot of my colleagues attacked me online and things like that. So when I get comments and stuff like that, in the past I never reacted very well to them, but now that I'm trying to re-emerge on social media, what bothers me the most is just the stupid point blank comments that are made that you would think would be by John Q. Public, but are actually by other professionals in the field that are trying to downgrade what you're trying to teach others. So there'll be a water cremation video, and you got some jackass in there saying Soylent Green, or it goes into our drinking water. It's like, you're the professional that's supposed to bring comfort to the people that are maybe electing to have this procedure done instead of flame cremation. Maybe be educated on it. It's like they were not open about green burial when I first started talking about it in 2016, and now it is the marketing thing. You've got composting, you've got water cremation, you've got green burial, you've got traditional cemeteries that are opening up little sections and calling them green burial sections. It's just like, yeah, you know,
Yeah, like
does that
inside
kinda answer? It's
haters.
like that gets me more than anything. It's the
Right.
colleagues that are acting a fool online. Yeah, because other
Yeah.
people see that.
Trust me. Tracy and I see that on the mental health side for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of passion, there's a lot of strong opinions.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, as much as we want to believe that professionals are going to act professionally, they're still human.
Sure, but some of them aren't very nice humans, and I feel like if you're not doing something that's helpful. This actually goes back to what my grandmother said. I think all of us have been told this before. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So if you don't have a nice comment or to me, an educated comment, leave it out. You can say, I don't personally use green burial, but I don't understand it. Or I don't personally do green burial, but somebody does, and I don't understand it. So I won't make any comments on it. Why can't
Mhm.
people just do that? Why do they just have to say uneducated things and then make people confused that don't read facts? I'm with you on
I
that.
really think part of the reason why some of my colleagues still attack me is because I was so open about how much it affected me in the past. And I've
Mm,
been pretty open about my mental health journey and how the industry has affected me. Like, I am considered disabled by the United States government from PTSD from the industry. And I'm working on getting off that label, re entering the working field. So, yeah, you have these professionals like my colleagues that will make such a big deal about suicidal families of suicide. We understand, we blah, 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 blah. But then they will mentally just fuck with their colleagues when they know that they're in fragile states like that. It just
Hmm.
blows my mind. I'll never forgive you, KH. You know who you are.
ah, calling them out. Dang.
Oh,
Oh my
oh.
God.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. And again, thank you so much for being here. And one of the things that Tracy and I do at the very end of our shows is we like to share and kind of briefly discuss a taboo fact. The fact I've chosen today is about death, but it's super random, y'all. Like that's pretty random, okay? All right. So, a 2018 study by the National Institutes of Health found that 259 selfie related deaths occurred between 2011 and 2017, while the Florida Museum of Natural History reported an average of only 6 unprovoked shark fatalities per year globally over the 5 years leading up to early 2025.
You know what?
I believe it.
I saw a fact about that at the Grand Canyon about selfies. People like go over where you're not supposed to go so they can lean a little extra and then it goes all the way.
Yes,
Yeah.
I actually was watching just like just doom scrolling or whatever. And somebody is recording at the Grand Canyon and you can hear a scream. And it later showed, or it later like talked about there was this news story about how this woman fell into the Grand Canyon because she was taking a selfie.
If you're going to selfie and fall down a canyon, call Melissa because she is going to give you a green for proper burial.
Yes.
Just saying.
But also, let's be nice to sharks, people, okay? Let's be nicer to sharks.
Oh, let me leave you with a funny. For a while, when the filters first came out on phones, you would see mourners, taking pictures of grandma with like the flower crown or like the smiley face, stuff like that was coming through. Thankfully, funeral professionals weren't doing it or they
Yeah.
weren't putting it online, thankfully. But that was funny when the filters first came out and people were like taking pictures of grandma in the casket with selfies with them and filters on. It's just, that was
That
good.
is
That was good comedy.
All I could think about was, hey
interesting.
guys, my dad and I in the casket, and dad has like the dog tongue out or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
In the ears.
Okay, like, yeah, in the right situation, I could see that going over. I could see that going
Oh
over.
boy. Oh boy. All right. Well, thank you again,
Thank
Melissa, for being
you.
here. And Tracy, always love you. You're amazing.
I
And
love you too.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Bye.